Hey there, Westchester University alumni. I am Justin Sachoka. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Ramblings Live. We're really happy to have you here. And if this is your first time joining us for Ramblings Live, let me explain what's going on right now. Each and every week for the month of October, we're reaching out to different alumni and having them right here on our Facebook page, where we are going to do a little get to know you. We're talking about alumni. We're going to be talking with people from campus. Next week is pretty cool because we have a couple different people from the WCU athletics department that are going to be on here joining us. But that's going to happen next week. This week, we are talking with Dr. Ann Krulikowski, and I'm hoping that I got her name right. She's smiling right now, so I think that maybe I did. You may know her as Dr. K, or you just may simply know her as Ann. She's been a professor at Westchester University for the past 15 years now in the Department of History. And she has been telling me a little bit about what we're going to talk about today, and it is fascinating. I've got to tell you, the history of Westchester University and some of the information that she's going to share with us today is absolutely awesome. But before we get into that, we want to wish Margaret a happy 103rd birthday. You may have seen this on our Facebook page. She graduated from Westchester University in 1939. So happy birthday, Margaret. You're looking great, and I love that you're posing with Rami there. Without any further ado, we are going to bring in Dr. K to Ramblings Live. Dr. K, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. As you were showing pictures of Margaret, I was wondering if she joined the parade when they built Anderson Hall. I read that they marched around the block and sang the Alleluia chorus, so she could have been part of that.
What year would have that been in?
1939.
She definitely could have been part of that. Wow, that's incredible. See, this is why I'm very excited about this show, because I told you already that I think that I am going to learn so much, these little tidbits of information about Westchester University that I had never known. I know everybody else that's joining in may not be aware of. Or speaking of people joining in, we want to say hi to Erica Nicole, who said, "Hi, Dr. K. I worked at WCU in the history department from 2007, 2011. I hope that you are doing well." Lisa Wright Bryan is joining us right now and said, "Happy Wednesday, alums, class of 1987 here. Happy birthday to Margaret as well." By all means, comment in and let us know where it is that you're watching from. Dr. K, what we do every week is we give a prize away. And last week was the first time that we unveiled This Is the Prize, which is a Westchester University themed cooler. We're going to do it again this week as well. So just comment, say hello, and you're going to be automatically entered to win the WCU cooler. Before we give that cooler away, though, I want to talk to you and get to know you a little bit better. Dr. K, where is it that you're from, and what led you to Westchester University?
Well, I'm from Delaware County, and I pretty much always lived in the area. And in the humanities, anyway, a lot of academics have to do a full national job search, which I didn't want to do. I wanted to stay in this area because my family and my friends were here. So I really was incredibly lucky to get a full-time adjunct position here, and I worked as an adjunct for 10 years and then was hired on the tenure track. So I stayed here because I wanted to stay at home.
That good for you for staying in the area. I mean, I as I shared with you earlier, I'm from Scranton, Pennsylvania, which I know you are a big fan of The Office. Yeah. And despite the fact that The Office is based there, I was looking to get out and to come down to this area. And of course, you don't want to leave this area. It's amazing. And I myself have now stayed somewhat locally to Westchester. Where did you study at?
I went to Immaculata as an undergraduate, and then I did graduate work at Villanova in Delaware. So I always stayed in the area.
Yeah, you were always in this general area. And what did you think of then, I guess, Westchester University at the time when you were at Immaculata, when you were in other places? Did you know of it? What was your impression of it at that time?
Well, I did know about it. One of my special interests is architecture and the social and cultural history of architecture. So I had noticed just by living in the area, the green buildings. And so even when I was a graduate student at the University of Delaware, I used the serpentine stone buildings for a project for an architecture class.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say that the one thing that I remember my freshman year geology class was that it was serpentine stone. That I remember that was specifically what it was called. Now I'm going to glaze over here because we were talking beforehand about, I know that there was a And you know what? It did not come through. We had some pictures that unfortunately we were going to bring up, and it still didn't come through. It's a very large file, so it might download in the middle. And if I can, I'll bring it up, because I know some of what you're going to be talking about today. We have some photos to go along with it, and we will try and get them up and running for everybody here shortly. But what I want to know is, you have been at Westchester University for 15 years. This year is probably the most different than any other year in the past that I would imagine that you've been involved with. How has COVID-19 impacted your teaching, impacted your job, and everything that you do at Westchester University?
Well, of course, as the same for everybody else, teaching at home and not directly, talking to students has been a little difficult. But for the most part, I've tried to keep my classes as they would be face-to-face. And luckily, just by the way I teach, I don't give tests. I have lots of little assignments. It's worked out pretty much the same. I asked students at the end of the spring semester, what did you think? What would you suggest if we have to do this again in the fall? And they actually told me to keep it the same. So we're doing the same class discussions, student presentations, and it's worked out pretty well. It's not my first choice, but it hasn't been bad, actually.
That's you had shared that with me before, that you felt like it wasn't all too bad. And as someone who has not participated in a class, can you explain to people watching what I guess a typical class in today's setting might be like?
Well, I don't know. I think professors have all different kinds of ways of teaching classes, and and people in different departments, their different subjects lend themselves to different kinds of activities or assignments. And but I like a lot of discussion. I like students to read primary sources along with the textbook, so they can play historian and interpret documents and not have to take my word for it or the textbook's word. They can write their paragraphs if they were writing a textbook. So they seem to be really interested in doing that. And I really emphasize, instead of reading about politicians and stuff, a coal miner, which is why we talk about Scranton a lot. And or
coal.
Yeah, nurse working on a battlefield, or a sharecropper in the South. And so they read a lot of firsthand accounts, and that seems to be interesting to them. That's interesting to me.
Yeah, I find that very fascinating as well. It seems to be a little bit more detail oriented, a little bit more in depth with that. What did you study when you were off of the various schools that you were at? What was your major?
Music, art history, pre-med, and then English.
Let me start counting. I have to break it all out. Well, that was quite a bit. How then did you end up in history?
I don't remember. People ask me that all the time. I got a master's degree in English, and then I changed to history. And I don't exactly remember. I think maybe history seemed more like a field that I can combine everything. When I tell people I'm a historian, they start asking me things like, what was General Burgoyne's first name? And, I don't know. And I don't know who won the I do know who won the Battle of the Brandywine. I don't know anything else about it. I'm more interested in cultural history. So I bring literature. I have students read poems. I play music at the beginning of class.
So you've taken a little bit of every major that you decided, and you kind of bring it into this one profession now, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
What about Westchester University do you find fascinating? Because you've already, in this short period of time that you and I were discussing as we were getting ready, I think there was like 4 or 5 things that you told me just rattling off that I was already fascinated by. So what fascinates you about Westchester University's history?
As far as its history?
Sure.
I think just the evolution of it. I didn't realize that. I knew what normal schools were, which is how the university started out. I didn't know exactly what they were or how the curriculum differed.
I don't know. So can you actually explain for me what is, because I know that's how it started, and then I'm sure that I'm probably messing up the complete order, but I know that it was a normal school. I know Westchester State College, and I'm sure there was something in between there. And then it became a university. What was a normal school?
A normal school was set up specifically for the training of elementary school teachers. And so the state of Pennsylvania set it up. The state of Pennsylvania lagged behind in education and finally set up a normal school system. And they actually were mainly private institutions for the first 40 years because the state did not want to spend money on them either.
Wow.
So private stock investors could actually own a normal school. So it made it very different. Westchester was very lucky with its trustees because they seem to have run the school very well.
So Westchester actually did start off then as a private institution before it became a public one then.
Right, it
That
did.
was oh, wow.
Yeah, teachers, the students had to pass a state test, and sometimes the state would kick in money for capital building projects to expand the campus, but the tuition and the donations from the trustees actually really supported the school until 1913.
So Westchester University started 1871 is the year that I know of. I mean, that's what I remember from the sweatshirts and where it was just written everywhere. 1871, but it sounds like there was history before there. When was the actual start of Westchester Normal School then?
Well, it was 1871, but
Okay.
I think the catalogs mention still that a lot of the original trustees had also been trustees of the Westchester Academy, which was a private academy for boys. And so they had a history running a school that they were very proud of that had a good reputation. So when they disbanded that and went into the normal school, they were really determined to have a liberal arts component, even though the state didn't want that. And so Westchester from the beginning always tried to add a little bit of extra beyond what the state mandated.
Well, which I feel like still holds true to today. I mean, I don't know that we're number one in the state school system, but I think that we're way up there we're no doubt. And I know that we all believe we're number one at the very least. When it comes to, I guess, life at Westchester University in 1871, what might have that looked like? Meaning, what buildings that are on campus today may have been around then? How big was the campus? What could we have expected if we were in the class of 1871?
The first class would have been 1874, and I will point out, for the alumni, that
there we go. Yeah, my math is not quite. I swear I graduated.
Yeah. And actually, the very second graduation, the alumni came back and they established the Alumni Association. So that was as soon as they had alumni, they established an association. But the campus would have just been the one block where the quad is and the library. It was just that one.
Wow.
And it was just part of one building. It was just part of the original main hall. So it all was one building. And that was typical of normal schools. They didn't start out as a campus with a lot of buildings. They were just main hall.
And would that hall, it would have been living quarters as well? It's where people would have stayed. You were coming to Westchester University, similar to today. You live on campus, you go there. It's just that the buildings were a little bit easier because it was a building instead.
Yeah, the offices, faculty, the dining room, the kitchens, the library. And it amazes me, in normal schools, boys and girls lived in the same building, which doesn't seem to have caused any brouhaha. But I think about, and I read about, all of the kind of tension over co-ed dorms being introduced to campus in the 1970s here and on other schools as well, and how upset some people were about that. And yet in the 1870s, boys and girls lived in the same building.
And it was no problem whatsoever at that time.
No.
That's right. So you're talking about where you're reading these things. Where do you find this information? Where maybe somebody who's a budding historian, a wannabe historian, I would have no idea where to go to. Where is it that you go to for this information?
The library.
Oh, that little thing.
I like that. So we do have a university archives upstairs on the 6th floor, which a lot of people don't get to. And they do have a very nice collection of the presidential papers. But what I found really helpful were the student newspapers and literary publications and the yearbooks. They're really creative and they're really fun to look at, the art and the writing of the students.
I was part of the university radio station when I was there, and I wasn't part of the quad and part of the TV station. And I remember my time at the university radio station going back and finding old tapes and mixtapes that people made that we had. And it was like this little time capsule back to 1983 when somebody had their voice there and what was happening on campus. They were talking about the campus events. And I know that the quad, which has been at Westchester University for a very long time, I imagine would be kind of the same way too. And I know that those archives are available out there as well. Have you dipped much into the research I ask this because we had somebody here just, I think it was maybe 3 weeks ago, from the Chester County Historical Society that was talking about what they offer and what their archives are. Is there a relationship between the university and the Historical Society when it comes to swapping information, swapping archives, things like that?
I believe there is. And like a lot of universities, the archives or special collections beyond the university archives collects things about the local area beyond the history of the university. And we have
Okay.
some really interesting stuff like Anthony Wayne, who was the only Revolutionary War hero. We have correspondence of his and his telescope. So we do have some like locally or even nationally important historic objects there. Yeah.
I remember being at Tanglewood, and there was a photo of George Washington that it was in the dining room. And I don't know that you know much about that, but I'm going to put you on the spot here. Do you know what it is I'm referring to? Which
You mean
painting?
a photo or a painting? The painting?
It's a painting. Yeah, it's actually a painting. And I believe there was a story with it being in a fire and it was taken out, and I just remember finding that fascinating. And some of the stuff that was in Tanglewood, I remember that there was, I think it was there was a grandfather clock that I want to say was Ben Franklin's grandfather clock. Okay, I have that. I'm trying to retain the information from when I was at those dinners in 2013.
Yeah. I don't know if the painting was ever in a fire. That might be true, and I just don't know. But they are two objects that we got from the Westchester Cabinet of Natural Science a long time ago. Normal school did. And
Wow.
painting was done by I can't remember, it's Charles Wilson Peale, but one of the most famous families of colonial painters. And I believe it's one of the only paintings that Washington actually did spend some time sitting for.
Oh, wow.
From life. And in 1932, on the 200th anniversary of Washington's birthday, or birth year, the Postal Service did a collection of stamps that represented different stages of Washington's life. And our painting was used for one of the stamps in that. There's a Wikipedia.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I feel like I don't need Wikipedia. I can just call up Dr. K. She's like a walking encyclopedia here with all of this stuff. Westchester University is celebrating 150 years, and what is the significance of that? I mean, to anybody, wow, 150 years, it sounds like a long time, but what does that mean for a school that was a normal school, that moved up the ranks to become a university, to be around for that long? What does that say about the school?
I think the most important thing that reflects and that we celebrate is that in the transition from going from a normal school to a teacher's college, to a state college, to a university, what that meant every step of the way was the school could actually educate more Pennsylvanians because restrictions of only educating elementary teachers and then secondary teachers were removed. And so the school actually could play a bigger part in people's lives and help more and more young Pennsylvanians find their path in life and get the preparation they needed for it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, even when you think back, and I remember people saying, "Oh, Westchester, that's a teacher's college." I mean, that seems to have held strong throughout the 150 years that it's known for the education programs that it has in there. And I know there's a documentary that is being worked on currently. I don't believe that it's finished yet, correct? And it's about Westchester University. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, Elle Walton at the university is kind of the documentary mogul.
Okay, yeah, I know Elle very well.
Yeah, she's planning it out. And I just spent in the past couple of weeks more than 5 hours being interviewed by her. She's a great interviewer. And I believe she plans on having other, alumni be interviewed, maybe some of the oldest who live in the area.
Sure.
Who worked at the school, who have memories to share. So it should be very interesting.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating. Any ideas to where or when rather that's going to be available? Is there a target timeline for that?
I'm not sure myself when the target is. I would imagine sometime early to mid 2021, which is the anniversary year. COVID, I think, has delayed a few of the beginnings of the celebration.
Sure. I think that to be able to connect with people from all different times from Westchester University for me, even doing this with Ramblings Live, has been really cool to see what has stayed strong throughout the years and changes that have happened, changes that have occurred. Even you mentioning about how the quad was that original piece. I mean, the quad being there from day one, and it's still being there today, and being the heartbeat of campus, where you always see people walking back and forth. It's just, to me, I find it fascinating, all of those little things. What do you think is the biggest change that has occurred in the last 150 years at Westchester University?
The biggest change?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the fact that, it started out as a quad, as that little 10 acres, expanded across the street in various directions, expanded to South Campus. But then there were off campus and industrial parks, classes being held, exchange programs with schools on other continents and campuses. So I think, and now Philadelphia campus. So
Yeah.
I think expanding to many other locations, which offers students a variety of opportunities.
Yeah, I guess outside of if somebody from 1871 would have seen the growth, where it was one building to worldwide at this point, it's a really valid point, that it has grown quite a bit in the 150 years that it's been around. When it comes to, I guess when it comes to Westchester University's history in the last 150 years, you were mentioning how this isn't the first time that they've gone through a pandemic, an epidemic like this. Can you tell me a little bit, because I was fascinated about how many times something like this has occurred in the history?
Yeah, we're doing the history. Well, I know because the Gilded Age is one of the areas that I specialize in, which is another reason I was really interested in the normal school era. But of course, that was one of repeated epidemics in cities. And with the immigrant ships coming, the rats on the ship, that's why they had all these quarantine stations along the coast. And so cities were hit, and Westchester University and other schools repeatedly, typhoid, cholera, and then eventually in the 20s and the 30s with polio epidemics, so scarlet fever. So there were quite a few times where the school had to delay the opening of the school year for a month, close down a month early, close in the middle of the year, quickly evacuate the campus. So I think there might be at least 20 times where that's happened before. Nothing as long as our current situation, though.
Sure. And obviously, too, I mean, nothing. It's amazing to see the technology that exists now. I mean, 15 years ago, Skype wasn't a thing. Zoom didn't exist, and the way that we communicate now, the way that you and I are communicating right now, wouldn't have been a thing. So obviously, I don't think that there's no way that the university would have been able to have been connected as well as we are throughout this in any time. But it's really interesting to hear that that's been a situation that the university has gone through before in the past, and about 20 times is what I was shocked to have heard that, and couldn't believe that was the case. Just like Jess Lynn, who wrote into us, can't believe that WCU was this old. So look at that, Jess, you learn something new every day. 150 years is what we are celebrating coming up here. And Dr. K, I'm going to put your knowledge of Westchester University, and specifically the campus buildings, to the test as well. So we're going to play a game here that's called Name That Hall. I'm going to bring up photos. Now, tell me, you can see the photo?
Mm-hmm.
As I bring it up? Okay, good. Because we've had in the past where people couldn't see it, so we couldn't play the game. But you can see it, which is great. So really simple. I'm just going to bring up an image, and you're going to tell me what that is a photo of. So what do you see right here? What hall is this?
Do you mean me or people? Me?
Oh, no, you're going to tell me, yes.
Oh, okay, it's Anderson.
That's Anderson. I'm going to add another element to this now.
Okay.
We're going to make it a little bit harder, because I would think that you probably are going to know every single one of them.
Not
necessarily. Okay, well, we'll find out. Give me a quick little history fact about each hall. So Anderson Hall, can you give me a quick fact about that?
When it was built, it was wired with radio. And one of the first, actually a few years ago when I gave the campus tour, I had somebody whose father told her the same thing, that the students and the faculty listened to FDR's Day of Infamy speech on that radio system.
No way.
Yeah. Isn't that
that's fascinating. That's really interesting. How about this one right here?
That's, is that Schmidt, the dorm?
That's Schmidt Hall. That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
Any fact about that one?
You know what? I don't know anything about it, except it's part of the 1960s building campaign, which was one of the two big eras of building. And it's when they're building high rise, because of course the campus population's expanding. So it's an era of all high rise dormitories. And it was a girls' dorm. for a long.
You are like the Encyclopedia of Westchester University. I feel like that's got to go underneath your title there. Let's take a look at this one here. Pretty famous at Westchester University. Which one is this?
Phillips.
And a fact?
Memorial. Actually, the arch that I absolutely love walking through. The architect told the Daily Local News that he got the idea of the arch from an arch at Winchester Cathedral in England. I just found that out not too long ago.
No way.
Yeah.
And is that because, of course, this is the Whispering Arch here? Would that be a Whispering Arch there as well?
I don't know.
Not sure. We're going to have to look that up.
Mm-hmm.
We'll look it up and see. How about this one? Talking about education.
Yeah, that's recitation. And what I'll tell you about that is that the land that stands on was the original baseball field. So a lot of male students were very unhappy to have that building built.
I can imagine people being a little bit upset with it's taking away the baseball field. Although there's really nice baseball fields that are available now. Wow, did I know that?
Yeah, that's when they bought the property next door across Church Street.
Oh, wow. How about this one?
That's the model school. Or the model school. See, I'm like still living in the 19th century. Ruby Jones Hall.
Ruby Jones, that's right.
Yeah, it used to be the model school. And it was named after Ruby Jones, which many people advocated for because Mrs. Jones was the first African-American teacher and professor on campus, started out teaching in the model school and then was hired to become a professor and oversee student teachers. So that she joined, actually Dr. Sykes hired her.
Oh, wow.
He was a great advocate even before he became president of trying to recruit Black faculty, which he worked very hard to do.
I want to just walk around campus with you at this point because I feel like I would learn so much from you with everything. Fairly new building. Which one is this?
That's that new business building.
That's right. It's that new business building. That's exactly right. I guess not much history to that, but maybe there is. Maybe there's something we don't know about that you do.
Well, actually, I did see. This isn't really history because it's new. It's on the site of McCarthy Hall, and Grace McCarthy, of course, was a long time dean of women at the school. But I read on the facilities webpage that this was supposed to be in kind of a neo-Gothic style to complement the campus. And actually, Phillips and Anderson are Gothic, but Gothic style was never typical of normal schools. They had other styles. So that kind of separates them, and it's kind of a different kind of architectural history than other kinds of colleges and universities.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, that's I like I said, you're walking encyclopedia here. Another one that's fairly new. What's sad is when I was at Westchester University, it was brand new, and at this point now, it's getting older and older as time goes on. Which building is this? It's
actually built? That's not.
Yeah.
That's not
built.
Science Center, is it? The Murray Science? No,
that is not. No, this is the. I don't know because I never went to it. It's the gym. It's the recreation building.
Oh, okay. The fitness center. Okay.
The fitness center. That's exactly right. And what I think. I lived in Tyson Hall my freshman years when they were tearing everything down. Next to that, I think was that Ramsey then? I believe was there.
Yeah, Ramsey.
Okay, so that's what used to stand in its place. The last one here, which building is this?
That's the Smucker. That's one of the Smucker buildings.
The Science Center, exactly.
Okay, yeah.
And how long has that Science Center been there? Do you know that?
From the 1960s.
Okay, so that's same era.
Yeah, actually, the first boys' dorm, which was the original Wayne Hall, stood on that site, and that was another green serpentine building. I just came across some pictures of Samuel Smucker actually teaching classes. There are some in the archives.
That's amazing. Are there archives? Are they digital at all? Can people access them online?
Oh yeah, the photographs, they're wonderful. They're all digitized online. They're very difficult. You can't really search them too much, like using search terms, but yeah.
Where can people go to find all of that?
If you go to the library website and then go to under services, I think it's special collections, and then go to digital collections. The yearbooks are digitized. A lot of the newspapers are digitized. So it's a great resource to browse through. It's really fun.
That's fantastic. Well, Dr. K, I want to thank you so much for joining me on Ramblings Live. We're going to go to a few more Facebook comments. Denise Melnick said, I would love a book on WCU history with lots of pictures and info about WCU. But Denise, there you go. You can head on over. Say that again?
2021. It's coming out.
There you go. 2021 is when it's coming out. So stay tuned. That's there. Sarah said, Denise, I was thinking the same thing. So there is a want for that. And Erica confirming that, yes, Ramsey was there. Last question that I have for you right now, obviously different times that we're living in, you're teaching on campus. You're currently a professor there. What advice do you have to current WCU students? It's a very vague question. Let's make it a little bit more specific. What advice?
I don't know.
Let's say graduating students. What advice would you have for graduating Westchester University students who are graduating under times that they probably were not expecting?
That's like too big. Let me give advice to current students.
Okay, let's do that.
I would just try doing internships, try broadening your experiences, your knowledge, so that you really develop yourself and you have the ability to go in a lot of different directions, depending on how the economy develops and what kinds of jobs are out there. Declare a minor. I kept declaring majors, but you can declare a minor. So I would just try to develop as many interests as you have to give yourself as many options in life as you would like.
Great advice. Dr. K, the Westchester University walking encyclopedia. And that's at least what I'm going to be calling you from now on, with a documentary that's coming out in the near future, and a book, it sounds like, as well, coming out in the near future too.
Can I say something? I'm really excited to see Erica's holding a baby there. Congratulations.
Let's bring up Erica's picture there. There is Erica and her baby there. So congratulations to Erica. And let's see, and good suggestions. And Chelsea's chiming in saying to make the most of your availability as well. And you know what? This is a perfect segue here, because Ram Nation is something that exists. It's an online platform where current WCU students can get advice from past alumni. So if you want to help out any current WCU students, head over to wcualumni.org/Ram Nation. For that, Dr. K, Erica just chimed in and said, thank you very much. And I want to thank you for joining in on this edition of Ramblings Live. We appreciate it. Stay safe, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you, you too. It was a pleasure. It was fun.
So long. And so that was Dr. K, but coming up, we have a full schedule of Ramblings Live now through the end of the year. So make sure that you head over to our Facebook page to check out who's going to be on here next. I can tell you that next week, the WCU athletics program is going to be joining us. It's ironic because they're going to be joining the least athletic person from Westchester University. But hey, we're going to find something to talk about, and that's going to happen next Wednesday. And it's still not too late for you to comment to win that WCU cooler. Just comment and say hello. That's it. Everybody that's wrote to us so far is going to be entered to win in that. Sarah's chiming in on Facebook saying, awesome, thanks so much for the history lesson there. And I learned quite a bit in this past half hour. I hope that you did as well. And I hope you join us next week for our next edition of Ramblings Live with the athletics department there. Until then, I'm Justin Sachoka.